Welcome to The Unheard Outsider. On this week's episode, we will be discussing policies and politics with an emphasis on gaps in higher education. We'll be focusing on inner politics and how outside policies affect higher education. Come on into our space and enjoy the conversation.
Welcome to The Unheard Outsider. We're super happy to be back for another mini season. Sorry for the break and a long time of no communication. Super excited to introduce at least one of my new co-hosts to the room that'll be joining us today. We're talking about policies and politics, particular higher ed, and how that kind of weaves back and forth from grassroots and into institutions. And I want to allow my wonderful co-host to introduce herself in this space.
Hey y'all, my name is Nicole Bugliotti. I'm the studio technician and sometimes art instructor here at SPSCC. And thanks for having me, Q. I'm really excited to be participating in the Unheard Outsider this season. And I'm super excited to meet our guests today.
Awesome. And we also want to show some love to, for those that don't know, Erin Rust is also our new co-host to the show. And she is out not feeling well. So can't wait for her to join us on our next episode. So again, like I said earlier today, we're talking about policies and politics, but I also want to give the opportunity for the guests here to introduce themselves. And I'm just going to go one by one. And we're going to start off with Adam Tenenbaum, and tell the people what you do and who you are.
Everybody, and Q, thanks for having me back. Last time I was on here, it was you, me, and Rain. And so we must have not caused too much trouble to get us back on. So thank you. It was great to be on last time, and appreciate the invite back. I'm a professor at SPSCC. I teach a variety of legal courses, law-related courses, and I'm the program lead of the paralegal department. And I'm a former practicing attorney from the Chicagoland area.
All right, my sis, Rain, go right ahead and let the people know who you are and what you do.
Good afternoon. So my name is Rain Pearson, she, her pronouns. I am the administrative law director at the Utilities and Transportation Commission. As always, I have to give my disclaimer that I am not representing the agency today. I represent myself and only myself.
I love that. And last and never least, the queen bee of the freaking just the Washington State power afro amazing Black woman, Erin Jones. Let the people know who you are and what you do. We'll be here all day about what she do. She's absolutely fucking amazing. So let the people know what you do, Miss Erin Jones.
So I am an educator. I'm a mom, a wife. I use she, her pronouns. I'm an author now. So just wrote a book, and I just published a workbook to go alongside that on racial reconciliation and racial justice. I do speaking. I teach classes. I train, used to be just K-12, but I train in higher ed, government agencies, nonprofits, and racial equity work. But I also use my story and this beautiful afro to inspire young people to think about what's possible for them. And Q, I didn't get to tell you this before we started, but I'm going to be the keynote speaker at the Final Four next year. So if you follow basketball at all, yes. I played ball for 40 years, and I get to take my basketball and my racial equity work to the Final Four next year in Dallas. So probably the biggest thing I've ever done in my life. So super excited about that.
See, this is why this is exactly what I say. What haven't Erin done? If you listen, I love Erin. Like, I love Erin. So just want you all to know that. And I love everyone here too. You know, me and Erin just, that's my girl. But I'm super excited to get into conversation. And I think the first question that I think the group, particularly the co-hosts and myself and all of us kind of did a little debriefing. And one of the things I think we thought would be really good to kind of switch up to get us started to any episode is really having you go around and explaining when was your first time you actually realized you were unheard.
Wow. I mean, I was abandoned in a hospital in Minneapolis, Minnesota at birth. I could talk about being unheard. It's interesting because last night, Anna, I lead a group of educators to talk about what would it take for schools to get education right. And one of the things we've been talking about for the last 2 weeks is the internal stuff that happens with babies, especially Black and brown babies, when they don't make the connections, like initially with biological family, and the trauma that causes from day one. In fact, in vitro. And I think about that for me, right? As you asked that question, like it was day one being abandoned by my mother in that hospital and never having contact with her. So I've never met my biological mother or my biological father. And so I think about that as the first moment. I couldn't have articulated it at birth, but I know my body carries the weight of that.
Wow. Anyone else want to jump in?
I'll try to go next. This is a tough question, and I kind of am going to equate maybe a little bit of unheard and unseen, if that's connection makes sense. I think it does.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, I have a kind of a different lens on it, right? I'm a white male, and so I'm the herd. If you really think about the way the world works, I'm also Jewish, and so that comes into play in it as well in my background. To me, I would say that the thing that stands out the most is I remember I started off in my legal career as a prosecutor, as a criminal prosecutor. And this is over 15 years ago. And I remember it was a very, very toxic environment. And outside of Chicago in a county called Lake County, which is kind of like the second busiest county other than Cook County. Okay. Right. So, and you've got Waukegan, which is a town, not dissimilar from areas of Chicago where we're seeing on the news. It's the same thing. It's just a microcosm of that. Right. And to me, the biggest thing was one, the toxic environment, which was often directed at me because of, being Jewish, right? Because it was not common in that office, though it's stereotypically associated with the profession. And I say stereotypically, right? But so there was that. But the real thing was, to me, that was the first time where I voiced a concern about the justice system to a supervisor. And it was just like, don't care. This is what's going to happen. And I quit as a result of it. And it involved a police officer who had information in a report where they were lying about a criminal defendant. And it was clear there was evidence to indicate that this was in fact not truthful. And the defendant, a Black woman, was going to take a plea deal because she saw no way out. And I said, I refuse to get up in front of a judge and say something that's not true. And the not true piece didn't necessarily connect to what the conduct was, but if that's not true, what else isn't true, right? You have this domino effect of what's going on here. To me, this is a bad arrest. I'm not going to get up there. And I just got looked straight in the eye and said, we don't question the report. The report goes. And I said, I'm not going. And they went forward. Obviously, highly relevant to what we're seeing now. And that was the time I was like, okay, no one is here listening and no one is here seeing. We just want to keep doing what it is that we're doing as opposed to looking at the process differently. And that to me would be the point where I kind of had the first reflection on this issue.
Nice. Rain.
All right. Well, the first thing that's coming to my mind is not something I really want to share, but I will anyway. So I'm thinking back to middle school, and it was so I'm almost 45. So this would have been like 1993 or not 1990. Sorry, 1990, 1991. So before the concept of sexual harassment had really entered the public sphere, and I developed really rapidly, really largely. I had very large breasts. I've since had breast reduction surgery. To put that out there, it was the best decision I ever made in my life. But being very overly developed in middle school compared to the other girls, I was sexually harassed and assaulted on a daily basis. And, when I told teachers, it was, oh, they like you. Don't worry about it. Boys are being boys. There was no recourse for me. And so that's the first thing that popped into my mind of really, not being heard when I'm saying I don't like being treated like this. I don't, and I developed responses and parts of my personality and reaction to that I still carry with me to this day.
One, I want to say thank you for sharing, and thank you. Just want to give you virtual love and appreciate that, because it's hard. It's sometimes hard to tell that it can bring things up. You know what I mean? So I just want to say thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I want to thank everyone, all of you, for actually sharing in regards to when was that first time where you just felt unheard? I'm going to actually pass the mic over to my wonderful co-host who's going to start us off with a question.
Okay. Well, cool. I think we have a few different things we want to talk about today, but I just know this is something that has been in the news, and I think it's something that maybe to some extent affects us all. But this is student loan forgiveness. There's been a lot of interesting news with the waiver for public service loan forgiveness, some pressure from the Democratic Party to not restart loan payments, which I support. Please don't. And also some loan forgiveness for predatory loans from for-profit institutions. So I was wondering, has any of that affected you? Actually, I know the president of this college recently had his student loans forgiven, which is awesome. I think it was part of the waiver. But yeah, I was wondering if y'all have had any experience with that, what you're thinking about that. And I'd love any insight if you have it from your particular positions.
So I want to speak as an insider outsider. So what Q didn't share and what I didn't share is that although I was born in Minnesota, I was raised in Europe. And I was raised in a country where education is free all the way through your PhD. And that was the norm. For me, that was just the norm. If you stay in the Netherlands, you can get your PhD here. You don't pay any tuition. You pay for books, but that's it. And that was what I grew up with, this is how college works. And then I decided that I wanted to get a degree in the United States, and I wanted to go to an Ivy League college. And because all of the American kids around me, their parents had graduated from Yale and Harvard and Princeton and all of that. So I went to the United Nations School, which always shocks people looking like this. When I tell that story, they're like, "You're from where? Huh?" But I applied to Princeton. I got accepted at Princeton, and I graduated second in my class. I spoke 4 languages fluently. I had taken 11 AP classes. I was a triple varsity athlete. All the things that should get you a full ride to Princeton. But because of the name of my high school, they didn't look at my financial aid forms to determine that my parents were teachers there. They just assumed that I was one of the lawyers' kids and that I was white. And I got a $1,000 scholarship from Princeton. And I'll never forget that day because my parents had to say, "No, you're not going." And I had done everything possible to get a full ride to Princeton, everything. My SAT scores were high and all of that. And I remember that day because my dad, I'm adopted by 2 Scandinavians who show no emotion usually. They're emotionless. I don't know how I became who I am. Nature versus nurture. Not nurtured into who I am. Anyway, but my parents are not emotional people, but my dad was crying when I got home that night. And I don't know who was more devastated, me or my dad, that he was going to have to say no to Princeton. He was devastated. He'd watched his little girl do everything and more to get a full scholarship. So I ended up not going to Princeton, but I went to the sister school to Princeton, Bryn Mawr College, because they gave me 70% tuition waiver. And so I don't have any student loans, but I just would offer that I've been fighting for the last 32 years in education. It's one of the reasons I ran for state superintendent. It's one of the reasons that I stay connected to state government. America loves to call itself the best nation in the world. And yet what we do around student loans, what we do around how students have to pay is criminal to me. My youngest son will graduate with a master's degree from USC in about 3 months. His program costs $72,000 a year, his master's program. Now, fortunately, we have decent money, but he's still going to have huge loans. He got really lucky this year and got a full scholarship. So he doesn't have to pay this year's, but he's still got $150,000 in loans. And that's just gross to me. Now, fortunately, he's in the video game industry. He's in the George Lucas program. He's going to get paid big time, but he shouldn't have to now spend the next 15 years of his life paying back that money. He earned his spot at USC. He should be able to go benefit from the education he got instead of thinking about how do I pay back. And so I just want to offer that as Americans, freedom should also include education. And it's something that I really fight for. Education and healthcare are two things that for me, it's just gross that we don't provide those. It should be a right, a human right. And I think so many countries have already done that. Why have we not? Why do we fight against it? So I got less to say about that. Sorry.
Oh, thank you, Erin.
Yeah, no, I actually echo those sentiments about, education and healthcare. To me, those are like the two game changers in a human being's ability to do what we want human beings to be able to do in society, right? And it's interesting because we say we want the outcome of human beings to do these things, but we're not necessarily going to provide you the tools to do these things. And so those systems are inherently flawed. And from an economic perspective, if you don't want to buy the human aspect of the arguments, it's economically the right thing to do for the country, right? So I just share those thoughts, Erin, with you. I also am lucky that I'm not in a position that I don't currently have loans. But what I would say is as to public loan forgiveness, so it is an incredibly difficult system to navigate. It's almost designed so that people do not get forgiven. I don't know if it was intentionally designed that way or not, but it is designed that way. Up until recently, I think the numbers were like you could count on your hand the number of people across the country who really got relief from that program. I do know and have heard that they are trying to make it easier to navigate. There was some talk a couple years ago about getting rid of it. I don't believe that's on the table now. There is some legislation, and I'm also a representative of the faculty union, and I'm the political action representative. And so we had lobby day yesterday, and one of the pieces of legislation that is up is on this issue of public loan forgiveness. And it's not a financial bill. It's about providing education to community college employees as to how they can navigate the system. So in a sense, institutions or the state would be obligated to kind of help you and understand, here's how you go about getting the benefit of public loan forgiveness, because it is really challenging. That is a good bill. I think it as of yesterday, at least, it was still alive and moving forward, because it doesn't cost money. It just doesn't seem to be overly controversial. But again, it's just going to be informational. It's not going to make the process easier other than the extent to hope to help people navigate that process more. I do think the other thing that you are seeing, at least as to what we've seen a lot with for-profit institutions or what they've called degree mills or whatever the case may be, whatever the term is now, you are seeing forgiveness. I don't know how well advertised it is, but there's billions and billions of dollars for students in of those institutions have already received partial up to full forgiveness. The debate on should we forgive everybody's loan is complicated because you've got people who have paid those loans back who can't get forgiven now. We're saying, well, I had to pay my loan back. Why? That is really what complicates that issue. How do you just in the middle, right? And, maybe the answer is, well, too bad. We were where we were at the time. We're now changing the law, whatever. And I'm not saying what it should be because it is so complicated. But that's the holdup, I think, to that piece of that argument. So things are happening in this space, though, here in Washington.
Well, so for me, I should have my loans forgiven by now because I've been a public servant my entire career. But when I first got out of law school, the payment structure for the loan forgiveness program was not tenable for me. The payments were too high for the income that I was making. And then, it's gotten away from me. And so, here I am. That's fine, whatever. But in thinking about what Erin was saying about the why, of course, to me, I firmly believe the answer is racism. That's the why. I just finished reading Heather McGhee's The Sum of Us, which is about the economics of racism. And then having read not that long ago, Carol Anderson's White Rage, and just their analysis being that, white people will act against their own self-interests a lot of the time because the racism driving them, they simply don't want to create opportunities for Black people. So at the end of the day, America's in the state that it's in because of these decisions that we make based on our racism and our desire to maintain white supremacy.
Yeah, there's a lot of pulling up the ladder behind us. I come from a working class immigrant family, and I feel like there's a lot of conflict there. I'm part of a lot of financial forums, and I feel like people are really split between, oh, we should just forgive everyone. I don't care if I paid my loans, and a lot of anger and rage that people did pay it off. And I feel like sort of my white immigrant family is probably in that. I mean, they didn't go to college, so they didn't have student loans, but it's kind of that vibe, if we can do it, anyone can do it. So do it. I personally am taking advantage of public service loan forgiveness, and I want to get to Q's questions, but I do just want to plug public service loan forgiveness was really difficult. It has improved vastly. I've been in the program for 6 years and I've had almost no problems with it. And there's a really great public service loan forgiveness Facebook group with moderators that answer every question. And there's currently a waiver that came out in October of 2021. And Rain, that waiver might apply to you. I would check it out. And that was basically to address certain key problems, for example, being on the wrong payment plan, people who consolidated and reset the clock, et cetera. So a lot of those things have been forgiven. I've been seeing blanket forgiveness, not blanket, but bulk forgiveness expressed in this Facebook group. It's very encouraging. And the last thing I want to say about that is that the contract we signed for our loans includes public service loan forgiveness as an option for fulfilling that obligation. So even if it were to go away in the future, it's unlikely that we would have all of our contracts revoked and rewritten. So just to put some security there for folks. Didn't mean to go on a whole PSA, but this is a particularly special interest topic for me. But yeah, I want to hear Quentin's next question. I'm excited.
Oh, I think you're good. Go ahead.
Follow up just on one thing, because
Absolutely.
I just want to say this is an important thing for students, both who are listening to this at SPS and beyond. So remember, because the point of this was to encourage students to go into public service so that your loans would be forgiven, right? So the sense that if they're making this easier, better, and available to more will have the effect that it should. And students listening, this is important to learn and out there service, but it's cost prohibitive because of the cost of school or because of the cost of grad school or whatever it could be. So this is really a key, and the resources that Nicole has to help you navigate are essential for you in this process.
I totally agree. And no, you do not have to rush, Nicole. We move real slow. And engage in conversation and really enjoy it. I just want to put it out here for the folks listening, because I'm about to give y'all my business on how much I owe in student loans so we can know that this thing is real. I owe $117,504.32 in student loan debt. And that's me getting my bachelor's and master's degree. My mom was a single Black woman trying to support 2 kids. And I had, unfortunately, to take out loans and use the max to live and eat and all the things. So this shit is real. And now here I am. That's the only thing on my credit report, which I do hope they figure that shit out in regards to what affects your credit and how the whole credit system works, because it doesn't, in my opinion, work very well for, POC and poor folk. In regards to that, I want to be clear, because I do have a subscription with my FICO. I have to look at that all the time to make sure that they ain't jipping me out of my points. But I will say, this is real. Like it's really real, and it's nervous because a lot of my folks right now are talking, well, at least friends and brothers are like looking at like, oh, I want to buy a condo, I want to buy a house. I'm like, bitch, I got 117,000, in student loan debt. Like, do I need to buy a house? No, I might be renting for the rest of my life, and that's just what I want to put out there, that it is real, to circle back around. Yeah, Erin.
I wanted to add to that too. My adoptive parents are white people who were able to buy property. And so when we left the United States, they held on to their house and they rented it. And what they did with intention, because my dad's a math teacher, he knew if we can hold on to this house until Erin graduates from high school, we can use the money from that home, from selling that home, to pay for college. So I just want to throw out there that when people say, well, redlining, whatever, it was so long ago, the GI Bill was so long ago, we build family wealth in real estate. And for so many Black families, even in Washington State, not able to build wealth until the late 80s, if then, right? So we were still, even in Olympia, y'all, we were still redlining in Olympia. Black and brown people were only allowed to live in the county, which is why so many of us live in Lacey, because we were not allowed to live within the limits of Olympia, the city of Olympia, the city that's so progressive. But I just want to offer that, what you described, Q, is so powerful and sad. And I hope that people will think about this and think about the long-term implications of this. So we couldn't buy property until sometimes into the 80s. But if you've never bought property before, what would make you believe that you could buy property now? So we don't naturally buy property, right? My husband and I did, because we had some other examples of people who bought property. So we did, but most Black folks don't know to buy property and to build wealth that way, and don't have the resources on hand to just do that. So now you get into debt. And now, Q, what you described is so powerful. Now I don't even have money to go invest in property. So I can't build wealth then for another generation, right? And so this cycle just keeps replicating. And then people say, well, man, just go buy a house. Y'all, you know how to do this now, and we don't have redlining now. I need people to hear this and to realize that it doesn't actually require bad white people to continue to, it requires people to not say anything. That's all it requires, in fact. All it requires is silence and to keep things the same way they are. And we will just keep perpetuating this, right? And so I want to invite those of you that have power and influence, we need to step in and say, man, especially for people that over the last 300, 400 years have not had access to wealth, we ought to be starting there with forgiving loans, right? We ought to be allowing people to build wealth in real estate. It ought to be something that we're teaching in schools, the power of wealth, right? Anyway, so again, I could talk about this all day long.
No, you are good. And you know how the conversation goes. I will stop and listen, and we will just go with the flow. No, I think it's really important, because right now I'm in a stage of my life. I am very close to 40. I may not look it, but I am. It's like the 40 door is there. It's like, hey, it's almost time. And at that time, I really am looking to like settle down, think about really, and like having a home. Like I literally have been looking for homes, like just in general. But here in Washington, absolutely not. You're not about to give me a house, make me pay over $500,000 for a home, and the in the kitchen cabinets look like college cabinets. Absolutely not. And so there's just some things there. But I would love y'all's opinion or take on something as we move into a different topic. And I'm gonna give some context here. So I'm a part of the the employee resource group here for staff and faculty of color here at SPSC. So I'm a co-chairing with Erin Russ, who is, of course, the co-host here also, but is not feeling well. We'll miss you, Erin. One of the things that kind of comes to the surface every once in a while is this idea of like the power dynamics with title, but then more importantly, reporting your uncomfortable experiences with your supervisor and getting HR involved. And I really would love people's advice, because there's people that I talk to and hear of color who don't want to go to HR. And I guess my question would be, do you think, from your perspective, do you see HR as a part of the problem and not the solution in higher ed, or just in general when it comes to politics? Because this is something that I think that needs to be discussed, because right now you see a lot of POCs leaving higher ed because they're not being paid enough. They've been doing the work for a while. They're leading things, so they're being exhausted. They're looking, like I always say, one of Ursula's unfortunate souls, at the bottom, just sucked dry. So thoughts?
Well, I'll just say, as a Black woman, I think I can speak from personal experience. Man, there are two bosses that I could have filed suit against, but I didn't, because I knew the implications from my career. And as much as Q loves me, I am also very visible in this state. Being 6 feet tall with an afro, once I get one black mark, it follows me all across. I would have to leave the state in order to get where. And so I think there's a way that those of us who are people of color, I would say my queer brothers and sisters too, really similarly, there's a way that we have to be really cautious. And so we endure things that we should not be enduring. And this is really where our white peers need to, if you're really an ally, like, be an ally. I am tired of people cheering me on from the sidelines and saying, oh, go, Erin, go do your thing. Awesome. You're awesome. You're awesome. How you could use your privilege and your power and your allyship is actually going to HR, going to that boss and saying, hey, I see how she's being treated. It's one of the reasons I work for myself now. Seriously, I had, and I'm not going to name the bosses, but I had two, not my most recent boss, but I had two bosses before that literally were harassing me. And I'll just give an example. So I had a boss. I won an award from President Obama. I got a surprise award, literally got a call on Thursday, said, can you get to DC for a Tuesday afternoon award ceremony? This is a surprise. You're getting an award from the president. I fly my family. So my boss at the time offered to pay for my flight, nothing else, just my flight. So I'm getting an education award. And my boss he said, I'll give you flight for you. That's it. Not hotel, not anything else. Anyway, that's another thing. But I get there, fly my whole family there. We do the thing. I get to meet President Obama. I get to meet Magic Johnson, Harry Belafonte, like, amazing. I get spotlighted, one of 10 educators in America serving Black children. I get back to the office on Friday morning. My boss calls me in, sits me down, and I told y'all I'm tall. So he was not as tall as me. And at the time I used to wear heels. So he was definitely not as tall as me with heels on, which he used to love to remind me all the time that you're really tall. Why do you have to wear heels? And he sat me down at the table so that I would be shorter than him, stood over me and said, your shit stinks like the rest of us. And my job for the rest of the time you're here is to remind you of that fact. This is a real story. Like, I couldn't make this up. And then he said, get out of my office. Y'all, I had just met President Obama. I went from being on the top of the world to, and here's the thing that boss could have done. He could have said, man, look at our employee who just killed it for us. Let's celebrate our employee. Wow, we got somebody in our space that's doing really great. But that's not what happened. And in fact, my boss never met with me again for another year. I continued to work there and would not speak to me, would not look me in the eyes. And I endured that because I didn't know how to get out of it with HR. I didn't know how to, And could I go back now? I'm 50, so I'm older than everybody, I think. But could I go back to that day? Man, I would do something very different today, but I didn't know. I was young and accomplished. Like, I was really accomplished, and I should have known that. But even in myself, I was doubting myself. And I can tell you, every Black woman I've ever worked with has had a similar experience to that. Every one of my Black female friends has had an experience like that. And we don't go to HR because we're worried about, man, we're the like one or two females in executive roles. Like, we could potentially damage our potential to have work from here on out if we go. But I need my white colleagues to step in and say, this is not okay. Because there's a way that you can say something that I just cannot.
That's powerful.
Yeah, first of all, that's just surprisingly not unbelievable. Right. Right. In the saddest way that I could say that. And it's not. So I've sort of I haven't been an HR person directly, but I've sat in that role because in previous work experience, when I was in practice, I worked for a company that didn't have an HR person for several years. So I was the deputy general counsel. So I'm the HR. Right. And in a sense, what I hear and have seen is it's an issue not just with this piece, but it's that there is a lack of trust for the people who are in those roles. Because in a sense, what Erin is saying is, I don't trust that this person is going to have my back. Yeah. And in fact, will take action against me for raising a concern I have about my workplace environment, where I should be able to be free to work in that place environment without this, right? And this is that story is kind of pretty extreme to you get. As a matter of fact, if I were advising, I would say, yeah, you had a lawsuit there, right? There's no question about it. But then again, are you labeled in the marketplace as, well, this person's litigious? So, because that's public, if you file a lawsuit, we can find these things out about something. So there's a lack of trust in that body. And I think that's not higher education alone. That's in that department in organizations. From a perspective, how do you do that? When it's training the right, it's all the things that are the solutions that need to happen, right, are similar, just in different contexts, right? So here it's, people aren't, the HR people aren't trained to do what they're doing. And frankly, too, we're seeing this mass exodus of employees. They're calling it, right, the great whatever it is, right? Where all these people are leaving, and they're trying to figure out why it is. Well, it's a lot of reasons, but I can assure you that one of the reasons that people are leaving places is they're not taking stuff like this anymore. They're shopping around because the dynamic has changed. So that thus then comes, we need to re-educate or educate people as to how to do that. I like to tell my students, and this is what I would tell people when I was in the HR. I have what I call the Tenenbaum guarantee. I 100% guarantee I cannot help you if I don't know what the issue is. But when I make that guarantee, I have to get to the bottom of what the issue is. And I will tell you flat out, you may not like the consequences of what happens here. This person may not lose their job, right? Because there's a lot of laws and a lot of issues and a lot of factors when you're dealing with an organization, right? But that you, the person making the complaint, has to know, I'm going to follow this where it followed. I'm going to keep you in the loop on this. There's not going to be any retaliation against you. And this is the process and procedure that I'm going to follow. Then I have to follow that. And then we have to go forward. And the problem is, how do we get everybody who's in these roles to build trust? Because the minute that trust is not there, it's like two sides of the magnet that are the same side. They're going to push away, right? Okay, I don't trust you. Well, the other side is feeling the lack of trust, and no one's going to lean into each other. They're going to lean in against each other. That's simply what happens. And so I think it's a problem greater than the issue of of people feeling as though they can raise, complaint, and that they're protected in doing that is an issue broader, right, than everything. It's really an all-employment issue. And let's look at the Me Too movement. And, in a sense, we're having a quote-unquote Me Too movement because for 50 years, women at the workplace have not been able to raise issue. When they've raised issue, they've had to sign an agreement that says, I will not disclose what happened to me, right? And I'll tell you something. I've written those agreements. Okay, that have confidentiality language and the nature of a dispute that says it's not going to happen to me. And I've faced an employer who said, I want to fire this person for this behavior. And the employer says they make us too much money. So that's your motivating factor, right? People is not an organization's motivating factor all the time. That has to change. Now, that might change with what young people are doing is we're seeing leaving these organizations and going somewhere else where they're looking to appease. So yeah, is it a problem? Yeah. And is there a solution? Yeah. Is the solution hard? Yeah. And it requires people to change and do work and identify that they're a part of the problem sometimes, right? And like I said, I've written agreements where, I'm going to say, if you're subject to this, because my role is to protect the organization, and the organization isn't always about protecting its people; it's about protecting shareholder, right? It makes sense inherently and it doesn't make sense inherently.
The Kenneth J. Minart Center for the Arts Gallery presents the Black Love Exhibition, Community Building Through Leadership. From February 28th to March 6th, returning artists from the 2020 Futures Rising exhibition mentor emerging artists. The SPSCC Theater Collective presents the Thanksgiving Play by Larissa Fasthorse. For more information on these events, please go to spscc.edu/events. Are you a gamer? Do you enjoy esports? SPSCC now has a new esports program. Esports is a competitive environment for collegiate athletes to compete within video games. For more information, please visit spscc.edu/campus-life/esports.
So I have had varied experiences with HR, the first of them very negative. My first job out of law school, I worked at a state agency where I had a supervisor who was relentlessly sexually harassing me. And I endured it for 3 months until a male coworker overheard something and was like, look, just go to HR. I'll go with you. So I reported it. He was investigated. He admitted that he sexually harassed me, but the punishment was that they just demoted him to be my coworker instead of being my supervisor. And their reasoning was that he never touched me and my clothes were kind of tight. So I was kind of asking for it. So that was what they decided. They proceeded to retaliate against me. So, I left that organization. So that was kind of my first experience with HR fresh out of law school. And now being on the other side of it on an executive leadership team and having just gone through a complete a mass departure from our HR department and our exec leadership team, bringing in all new people. HR it serves its leadership. So whatever the mentality of the leadership that's in control of an organization, that is going to be what HR perpetuates. If that is, turning a blind eye towards microaggressions, racism, whatever, then that's going to be what prevails. So, I'm grateful that in my organization now, our leadership is we're on an anti-racism journey as an organization. We have a wonderful new HR director who has to listen to white people complaining about how uncomfortable they are and says, great, I don't care. Go back to work and go read a book. So it's possible, I think, for it to be a good thing, but that's only if the right leadership is in place. It's absolutely a reflection of the values and the policies of the people in charge at the end of the day.
I appreciate you saying that, because one of the things here at SPSCC is that a lot of the people of color here on campus don't feel safe enough to be able to go to HR, specifically because they feel like the person in HR is a part of the executive team, which means you're in cahoots and you're playing nice and you want to be in the club. And so if I come to you about something that may be directed to someone at that level of disrespect. What does that mean? And I too connect with what Erin was saying in regards to the job, right? I knew, and I've shared this with Erin as well, and I mean probably the whole school at this point, because they know I don't give a fuck. But I ended up sharing this, and I did the panel with the Race Within Our Walls, and which Erin has led, if y'all don't know. And I said, if you don't know what you're doing, basically, it's okay to resign. Like, please leave. Like, I can respect you when you be like, you know what, this shit is over my head and I need to go and take a break and really come back to this shit. That I can deal with. But you trying to, there's only so many faking through shit to me, like fake my way to, no, I need you to, and at that point when I did that panel, I don't want to say I was like a blackball, but I was, felt like I was labeled as more of like this radical person. And to be very honest with you, like if most of the executive folks that come and maybe see my boss or come to the center, even if I'm here, they don't even say hi to me. They only say hi to me if I may be by myself. But if you're over here, like, oh, you know me, I'm Southern. So it's like when you say, hey, everybody, how y'all doing? All right. You know, it's a Southern thing, but it's a Black thing too, and for me. And I thought that I was being punished because I was just speaking my truth. And I do want to share this, which happened recently. So this happened on January 18th. I sent out a campus email about available workshops available. I've told Nicole this. And I'm going to name the person because, you know, I don't give. So this is a person here at the school named Dan Brown. I don't know Dan Brown, never met Dan Brown. Me and Dan Brown have never even had a conversation. But I get an email after sending it out because I'm like, here's available workshops and cultural competency thing. I get this. Will you please take me off this list? I find most of this to be offensive. And this lie about racialized STEM is disgusting. I do not want to receive emails from you. That came directly to me. And I forwarded to my supervisor. I'm like, how do we get this off? How do we get them off the, because I want to respect your request. It moved up to the VP and to the dean, and the dean said, so the dean replied, which is Brian Powell, who's cool people. He said, I'm sorry about this response from Dan to you. I have had a conversation with him recently about how he communicates and will do so again. So technically, I'm like, do I go to HR and report this? Where does that line? And I think some people get confused about how do you build a case with HR regarding a person? What does it look like what things can be talked to about to build a file on a person? And particularly people of color, this is the shit that doing DEI work, like the shit we go through, right? For people that just can't just look over and move on. So don't mean to be long with it, but I wanted to share something in real time of like, this is violent language, right?
Is this person a professor?
This person is like a lab tech, right, Nicole? Do you know? I know you.
Classified staff.
Yeah. Yeah. And this happened in like 2022. So here we are. I'm like, do I go to HR?
So what I think is interesting about that is that the belonging within our walls where you spoke, Q, that was like kind of how you got on my radar, because I was like, I really appreciate this person. And I was really touched by how straightforward you were, because honestly, I went into that workshop thinking like, wow, this is really putting our small amount of staff of color and faculty of color on the spot. And I would not have wanted to be in your position. So I really appreciated that. And And I was kind of curious if you would have repercussions. Like,
I did. I had a few people say a few things. I had one of my white colleagues who I'm really close with say that said that it seemed like I was angry. I thought they had certain leadership and I was upset with them. And the only time you think anytime you think I'm upset with you means something I said means you did some shit wrong. That's how I feel about, like, either you guilty on some shit.
What do they say? The hit dog hollers.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
But what I wanted to say about being someone asking to be taken off that list is like that Belonging Within Our Walls series. That is we close campus because everyone is required to attend. So I do think that's an HR issue. But something else that kind of comes to mind throughout this conversation is like, just no matter how warm and cozy, no matter how like lovely a work environment might be, HR is there for the organization. It's not really there for us. That's just something I see come up a lot. And I think I didn't really know that. I didn't really know that until I started seeing it come up in certain forums. So I just think that's interesting. And I guess for me, that kind of brings me back to Erin. And well, first of all, I just want to say, Erin and Rain, I'm so sorry you all had to experience that. I know it's not uncommon, but like, you don't deserve that. That sucks. And you don't deserve, again, to be unheard in that situation. No one deserves that. But it kind of brings it back to what Erin said. Like, I appreciate you saying like what you need from your white coworkers. I'm definitely evaluating, like you and I talked about that situation, and I'm evaluating how I've done what I've done in the past, and if there's more I can do. And I guess if HR isn't there for us, then like, what is the alternative?
Yeah.
Adam brought up like the Great Resignation. So we can all leave and start our own businesses. But if we don't want to leave, what if we want things to just be better where we are? What do we do? Number one, starting, yes, of course, those of us with certain privilege, making use of it. What else can we do?
I think, I know for me, one of the things I'm committed to is, unless something really massive changes, I'm not coming back into a system. And I'm using my power and knowledge now to help systems shift. So I do work with systems now. I help shift systems from the outside. And so I am really committed to using the privilege and power and influence I have to shift systems. So I think if each one of us could make a commitment to, first of all, owning that we as human beings are valuable. Like, I'll just say that first. I have to first model that I have value. I have value and I have incredible worth. And I have to show up in spaces and model that I have value and worth. As a Black woman, as a tall woman, as an adopted person, like, I have worth. And so I think I have to model that for people, because oftentimes I saw women and people of color in victim mode, like, I don't deserve this and I'm an imposter. I have to show up, I'm not imposter. Like, I'm actually pretty brilliant and not cocky, but I have to show up with confidence in spaces. And then I have to push systems. And so I would encourage people, own your brilliance. Everybody has it. Every single human has it. Own your worth. And then leverage your whatever little privilege you have, whether you're classified, certificated, executive, staff, whatever your role. Use your privilege to push systems wherever you see opportunity.
This is cute. This is going to almost sound crazy, but there's this almost bizarre sincerity to a message like that. I mean, this is somebody at least telling you this is who I am and what I think.
Yep.
I think almost more troubling is when we see, again, either internally or you just see it everywhere, somebody saying, I support this cause, I support you, but then all the actions that you see don't actually line up with that reality.
That part.
Okay. And I'd much rather somebody tell me this is where I am on this side of the thing.
Yep.
And sincerely just tell me that.
Yep.
And be like, okay. There are people that are on opposite sides of this thing. This is where you fall. Cool. Okay, that's where you fall. You've chosen to fall on that side of this. That's why I said it's like bizarrely sincere in a way. To me, the issue is we go through motions and then we go home on the day or whatever, and it's like, this is just a meeting or this is just a whatever. Q, you and I have worked hand in hand on an issue with students.
Yeah.
And, I'm thinking of last quarter where we spent a lot of time together on an issue with a student where you lied to me because I don't know that I knew the right thing, because I looked through this with my lens. And I wanted to say, here's how I'm thinking about this and I'm approaching it. I can't remember how many times I asked you saying, Q, if you think I'm doing something wrong here,
you did.
You please tell me that I'm not looking at this the right way. And am I being fair? Am I thinking of the things that I need to be thinking? Am I doing that? And to me, those conversations and those things move the needle so much more than the other piece of it of just saying, oh, I support this and I do this. And again, it's another piece of the conversation that we've had. To me, again, you can't be afraid for somebody to tell you you're wrong. And I feel it's important for me to say this more than anybody because I am the white male here. I want somebody to tell me when I've made a mistake. And I don't believe that makes me a bad person. I just believe I have the capacity to learn. Also, and I've said this to you, I've said this to you probably time and time again now, but when I hear a collective group of people that are collective because of how they identify, saying this body is not listening to me, or I don't feel that they're listening to me. The body can say we are listening to you, but they have to acknowledge the thing that needs to be acknowledged is the people saying this feel this way. And that feeling comes from just as much as what I am feeling, if what I feel comes from somewhere, then what this group of people who is collective on this comes from somewhere. And they don't understand how I feel. So I know that to be true. So I can't understand how they feel. But I have to understand that they feel and that what they feel comes from a source based on the circumstances that have brought, right? We're all, 5 of us sitting on this call, all brought here from wildly different circumstances, right? And or love to see these conversations playing out more where we're not afraid, saying, Adam, I disagree with you, or Adam, you don't have my lens. I don't think that Q, you're saying, Adam, you're a racist, right? You know what I mean? That's not what you're saying. But we're so threatened by the politicalization of this issue or whatever it is that it's like, no, don't. Everything I do is right. I can flat out tell you, everything I do is not right. It's just a reality. So I'm kind of grateful for the people who tell us, hey, this is where I'm at on this side of the aisle. Yeah. I almost wish more people were that transparent in a way. And I would love that if we could find a way for the people who were that resonated with me, which is, if you're somebody here who is in a position to say something, then do so. I may be somebody in that position for certain circumstances when a colleague of mine has an issue. There's times where I feel I've come to the defense of colleagues, and then maybe there's times where I don't know, maybe I haven't, thinking back on it now, or I don't know. Right. But that comment got me thinking. It didn't get me thinking I'm a horrible person and no way I've never done it. It got me thinking, what could I do? Mm-hmm. What have I done? I can't change what I've done, but what could I do? And what have I done in the past that I can inform from that? That's the lens at which I view it.
Rain.
So sorry, I'm having a lot of different thoughts go through my head, but I'm thinking about how, where I work now, I think I might have talked about this last time we were together, that we have a business resource group that was put together relatively recently for our Black, Indigenous, and other employees of color. And we've given them oversight of all of our policies, all of our procedures, and all this training that I'm doing for the leadership team on the anti-racism stuff. So I do the labor. I go to them and I say, okay, so here's what I'm thinking of what I want to do for the next installment of our training. They give me feedback, they tweak it, they say, okay, then I go do the work and I put together the lesson plan. And then I bring it to them. I say, okay, they tweak it, they edit it, they add things, take things away. And then I go and I do that piece. And then it's kind of this iterative process where then I go back again. Okay, now we're going to do this next piece. And I think that to me, that's been so important because I feel like a lot of the times when people are saying like, oh, we want you at the table, it's like, okay, but it's our table and you're going to come on our terms and you're going to participate in a way that's palatable to us. Mm-hmm. And that's not really listening. That's not really, it's not, it's just, you either do it our way or we're not going to listen to you. And so I think it's been really important to have this method of making sure that what we're doing is, in line with what's best for our employees of color. And then also like letting them have the final say at the end of the day, because I feel like for real transformative change to occur, we can't have that element of white approval at the very top of saying like, well, okay, as long as the white people at the top sign off on it, then we're good. Yeah. Because that's not real transformation. And, we're really hitting a wall. We're having this like split of white people in my organization, the ones who want to do transactional EDI work and the ones who are like really here for the transformation. And we're seeing all this, just splitting off and people, kind of melting down in really predictable ways. And being able to identify, okay, so you were faking it. Great. Good to know, because, you reach this kind of critical mass and this threshold where it's like, you're either really here, you're really showing up for it and you're really doing the work, or you're just paying lip service. Yes.
Which is my last question to the panel though. Do you really think having a executive diversity officer or some type of diversity officer in an organization is important? Or do you feel like it's become performative because now it's become sexy?
So I have been that person in 2 different districts. So I'll speak from personal experience, and this is something I talk about all the time. I think it absolutely can be performative. And I think if it doesn't exist, though, it's also not happening. So I think it's two-sided. I think equity has to be infused into everything we do, but what it tells me when you don't have anyone who is devoted to keeping that top of mind for an organization, it's not happening. I've not seen an organization where it's happening if there's not somebody who has to hold our feet to the fire. That is the job, I think, of a good, effective director of equity, is holding that executive team's feet to the fire. You have to answer to the big dog, whoever that big dog is in the organization. And that's your job. That has to be your job. That being said, I see a ton of organizations right now that are just hiring the equity director. And, oh, by the way, you're going to do this and that and that and that. And you're not going to get a support staff. And so we're going to ask you to save the world. You, one person, go do that thing. And so I see it in a lot of spaces being a setup for failure. I know in one of the districts I work for, I was over equity and 4 other programs, and I did not have a support staff. And guess what? Well, I'm a badass, so I did the work. And they had to hire 3 people when I resigned. So we got to stop that. If it's really serious, we have to invest in it financially. We need to invest in a support team. And it has to be seen at the top levels in our strategic planning and in our budget. I should be able to see it in your budget. I should be able to see equity throughout your budget and not just for the person at the top.
No, that's good, because one of the things is that, people tell me all the time, they're like, oh, folks around there, like, oh, I think you should definitely consider, moving up and doing being an executive diversity officer. And I say, I don't know if that's my calling, because I could lose my job very quickly, and only because I'm a truth teller. Right. And I don't get hired because I'm here to be your friend. I get hired because you needed someone to come in and do a job. And that's what I came to do. And so I always battle with that. And I commend Parfait for, one, doing the work and doing that at the level. But it's also kind of all of these executive diversity officer positions just started popping up. I mean, just in higher ed, in corporate. I mean, Amazon got so many diversity positions. I don't know what's going on. But my thing was just that, is it the new and hot sexy thing because they want to, because it's now become very performative, right? It's hard to figure out who's really doing the work and who's not. Like, this is where it starts to really get serious, right? So I don't want to take up too much more time, but I would love to hear from Rain and Adam.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Erin kind of nailed it, right? As I would say it could be a box that's checked. Oh, look we're an organization and we have this position, box checked. Or it could be an actual position that is designed to implement, make change, and be layered into the organization. I mean, here the simple reality is we're seeing these positions over the last 2 years become popular because of events out of the last 2 years. Well, these events that we've seen over the last 2 years are not just the last 2 years. These are events over the history of the nation. So, and if they were, again, globally, if these were all just solving everybody's problems, I would hear my friends and colleagues saying, oh, this is great. All of my problems are solved and everything. And of course, we know we're not hearing that, right? And so what happens is, oh, there's this problem. We got to throw something at the problem. And there probably is good intent, right? I don't know that I want to say that it's all intended as bad, right? There's this problem. Okay, we've got, and that problem is believed to be solved because we've got this role. Well, no, the problem has not begun to be solved. It hasn't even started, right? We've got to let the person in that role do the things they do. What Rain has talked about at the agency, it would be great if you would see that level of control pass to a group that is looking at this from a policy perspective. I don't know of any other organization that's doing that. There might be other state agencies that are following along. Certainly in the private sector, that ain't happening.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it can be, but if you're fighting the battle in that role yourself, that is very, very challenging to do. And there has to be buy-in from the top all the way through. The employees have to want it and be on board, and the management has to want it and be on board. Yeah. And I'm on the board of a private company in the area that had formed a committee as a result of this, where a lot of kind of similar authority and recommendation power was given over to that committee. And it's a lot of younger people who work there. And so they're interested in social justice and they're interested in these issues, and they're driving board decisions because they have that power and that ability, and the board wants to see this change.
Absolutely.
So these things have to work together.
I appreciate it. Rain, take us home.
Oh, okay. I'll just come back to what I said earlier. I mean, first of all, I agree with everything that Erin said. I think that was so exactly on point. And I also want to say that when I heard she was going to be here today, I freaked out because, Erin, I know who you are and I voted for you. And I was like, oh my God, I can't be in the same call with her. So I feel very honored to be in your presence. I just want to say that. But fully agree that, and it comes back to what I said earlier about HR departments, that, the EDI director is only going to be able to do whatever the executive leadership allows them to do. And unfortunately, and I even think we're seeing this at the statewide enterprise level, and I don't mean from the Office of Equity, because Dr. Karen Johnson is doing it and we are taking our cues from her. But there's definitely a way to do this just by checking boxes. There's definitely a way to do this and keep white people comfortable. And so that's kind of, that's kind of the tension, I guess, that we have. But one thing that we've done, I don't know if I told you this last time, is that we've added a question to all our interview panels. We ask every single person that we interview now for any job to tell us where they are in their anti-racism journey. And I'll tell you what, that is the single best interview question you could ever ask someone to really see who they are as a person. And if you're trying to build an anti-racist organization, you have to ask, where are you? What are you doing? Where's your mind at? And even people who get the questions in advance and have a little bit of time to research, if they're not on a journey, it shows in their answer. It's not something people can fake their way through. So that has been amazing.
I love that. And I hate that I have to cut it kind of get us out of here is so amazing. Got to go into interviews, child. You know they like to have us on there. So plug, but no, this has been absolutely fantastic. And I am going to allow Nicole to just take us home and get us out.
Yeah, thank you all so much. This was a great first episode for me. I loved hearing everything that you had to say. Thank you so much for your generosity in sharing with us.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you for listening and tuning in to the Unheard Outsider. All these guests here are absolutely fantastic. If I hear you messing with them, me and you got a problem. I just want to put that out here in the streets. I love y'all, and it was good seeing and being in space with you as always.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all for having me.
Of course.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, Erin, go ahead and plug your book in.
During the pandemic, I wrote a book, which I don't know that I'd recommend during the pandemic to write a book, but I did. And it was really out of the pain of everything that I was experiencing around race. And as my response to how can I use the pain that I'm experiencing to help other people learn to talk about race in healthy ways. And so the book is called Bridges to Heal Us. You can get it on Amazon. The beautiful thing is I'm making 70% of the profits. So it's okay to order from Amazon for me. And then also reach out to me on Instagram at Erin in 2016 or Twitter at Erin Jones in 2016. I actually have a free study guide. So if you want to do a book club, and the book is appropriate for children as young as 12 or 13, all the way up to grown folks. And I have questions for either group of people. So if you reach out to me, I am willing to send you that study guide for free because I'm a nerdy teacher, y'all.
Awesome. Go and get that book.
Yeah, local artist, local author, local celebrity, Erin Jones.
Thank you for joining us on The Unheard Outsider. We hope you enjoyed our conversation. Today we leave you with a quote from Malcolm X. I'm for the truth, no matter who tells it. I'm for justice, no matter who it is for or against. I'm a human being.